Welcome back, everyone. My name is Brett Hart, CSCS founder of Hitman Performance, and today we're just going to be talking about the types of isometrics and how and when to use each of them. Now, that has just been a big question and a big talking point among social media, so I thought I'd create this presentation in this video to kind of just focus in and hone in on the ones that I think are most important and understand that there are a lot of ways that they can be done. Some are better than others. Let's dive right into it. So, real quick, what are they? It's a system of physical exercises in which muscles are caused to act against each other or against a fixed object. In the layman's terms, the simplest way to put it, it's essentially force without visible movement. All right, so the muscles are active, but the joint angles will stay the same. There's high neurological demand because you do have to strain and focus on the position that you are trying to hold and maintain. And you are really good at just owning that position, and it's really good for rehab, performance, and resilience. You'll see a lot of return to play protocols utilize isometrics early on in the rehab process. That is, again, because if you are injured, you're usually in a sedentary state, and then you're being brought back into moving. So isometrics are a great starting point just to get more awareness and strength within those ranges of motion and those joint angles that you're going to see in higher velocity sporting movements. So that doesn't mean that they're just a rehab exercise. I've been using them a lot for performance gains, which I'm going to go over in later slides. So this is something that isn't just rehab that you do when you're injured. You can do this fresh, healthy, and it actually boosts performance down the road. So why do we need them? For a bunch of reasons that you can see on screen, but increasing work capacity, tendon stiffness, neural drive, stability, reducing wear and tear compared to higher velocity work, which I will get into, and enhancing motor learning and skill acquisition, which is a key point in what I want to talk about with a certain type of isometric that will go down. And if you've been following me for a little bit, you could probably guess which one that will be. But it is a spectrum. So isometrics shouldn't just be looked at as a vacuum. There are many different ways to utilize them and how we can emphasize and extract the most out of our athletes with a certain type of isometric that we want to use. So the ones that I'll be talking about today, and I think the five, those are the only ones you should really care about and focus on, are yielding, overcoming, extreme, oscillatory, and then pause and positional isometrics. So each have different goals and intent and neurological demand. So if you were to guess which one is on the right side, that would be labeled as a overcoming isometric because I am trying to pull the rack up, all right, as you can see there. But the first one we're going to talk about are yielding isometrics. So what it is you're holding position while resisting gravity or an external load. So these are great for tissue tolerance, strength control, muscular endurance. This is where you're going to see a lot of them done in rehab settings where you do about 20 to 45 seconds at a position. So here on the right side, I'm doing a rear foot elevated split squat where I'm holding for a minute. I'm doing it slightly different just from a neurological mental standpoint. But again, it is just building general strength base and being able to own positions. And it helps a lot of youth athletes, in my opinion, to just figure themselves out. And so they're not all over the place. If you get a beginner or a novice athlete and they don't really have full control over the movement, just have them hold a specific position at a specific joint angle, and then it tends to fix itself as you go progress towards eccentrics or even explosive concentric movements. Just having that baseline strength of maintaining position and that positional awareness and strength helps a ton, especially down the road. And then examples: wall sit, split squat, plank, push up, TRX. You can pretty much take any normal exercise that you'd see in a weight room and add a hold to that position. So like I said before, 20 to 45 seconds. Usually in the rehab settings, it's sub-maximal effort, but you would also want to progress it to getting more towards maximal effort, which is very hard and it's very fatiguing. And I also think it has a lot of mental resilience that can be added into it as well. Here's one of my favorite isometrics that I like to use for my hamstrings. So this pairs up very nicely if you are sprinting a lot or you're trying to return back to sprinting. How can I get my hamstrings to maintain contraction under load and under fatigue and under time? So we're trying to hold that position and essentially driving my hips up, engaging my hamstring like crazy. If you've never done something like this before, I would recommend trying it on the floor with no weight. And I'm almost going to guarantee you're going to cramp right away or relatively quickly because tends to happen. And this is a great exercise for people with knee pain. So chronic knee pain, yielding isometrics are going to be your best bet. just for tendon and ligament stiffness and getting some fluid and just movement in that area without moving. So usually your joints and your patella tendon don't really like high impact activities if you're not adjusted to it or accustomed to it. So the isometrics in front of the knee and behind the knee are going to be really great to help ease some of that tension and pain, so you can go into more exercises that could carry over towards your jumping and sprinting ability. So like the wall sit, the split squat are great for the quads, and then the hamstring is great for the hamstring in the back. And then we're going to fix up the knee that way. And then you can add these to your push-ups. All right, they're great just for building overall strength. I love in the extreme isometric push-ups that you'll see where the hand's elevated, that opens up the chest quite a bit. But something that I would also like to note with these is you can pair them with eccentrics or some type of tempo work to really mess with your athletes, really get a lot of time under tension, not so much from a bodybuilding hypertrophy standpoint, all right, because the load isn't going to be that high when you're doing a lot of tempo work. But what you're doing is just you're ingraining proper movement patterns, you're slowing everything down, and you're making sure the athlete understands fully what it is that they're trying to move, and they're becoming a mastery of movement, not just moving weight for the sake of saying they can move weight. With overcoming isometrics, now we're going to get more in towards the performance side of things for isometrics, in my opinion. So essentially, you're trying to move an immovable object with max amount of intent. So the primary adaptations you see with overcoming isometrics is you're getting max force production, you're increasing your neural drive through the roof, and you're increasing motor unit recruitment. I believe this is a great way to really peak athletes, really force them to feel what it feels like to exert as much energy and force as they possibly can into an immovable object. If athletes have some sticking points that they might be weakest at, so a bench press, for example, if you always get stuck in the middle top portion where your triceps fatigue, focusing on just driving into the rack at that height at maximal intent usually helps break types of plateaus, neurological plateaus, and being able to produce a max amount of force without really eliciting a lot of muscle damage. That's why it is great for in-season athletes to utilize overcoming isometrics, because yes, we are getting some type of neural fatigue accumulation with these types of exercises. That's why you want to keep the reps and sets down a little bit, but you still need to make sure you're touching strength in season. So doing this is a great way to make sure we're eliciting that strength response without without eliciting a lot of muscle soreness, because a lot of the times muscle soreness comes from the eccentric portion of the lift. So if we can maximally recruit motor units as we're producing force through an immovable object without getting the muscle soreness, that is a win-win scenario with any type of athlete, that especially in season where performance is the goal and not so much building. And then examples are the barbell pin squat, isometric bench press against safeties, the isometric mid pull. This is one of my favorite ones, is the Jefferson split squat. I think that pairs very nicely with any type of lunge jump variations or band assisted plyos or anything like that. And then program notes. I personally would never go over 6 seconds. All right. I've seen other coaches in the industry go well beyond that and go a lot further. I've personally only gotten up to 40 seconds was the most, but you do lose intent. So if you're thinking of going further than 6 seconds, just know it is extremely fatiguing. And this is usually paired with an exercise that is more explosive in nature. So like I said before, if we're going to utilize an overcoming isometric to help potentiate and spike our central nervous system, you want to do it only about 3 seconds so you're not gassed, and then go right into a jump where essentially you're going to have just more motor unit recruitment, allowing you to jump higher. And then you're going to need some long rest periods in between those two exercises. But a quick thing, if you want to do and implement right away, is try this out, and I guarantee you your vertical jump will increase just really quickly. So do a test vertical jump if you can. Do 3 reps of testing. Just that's it. Then I want you to do 2 rounds of the Jefferson split squat overcoming iso that you see here, 3 seconds each side, with 3 dumbbell jumps immediately after. So you're going to go 3 second, 3 second, 3 dumbbell jumps, about 20 to 25 pounds, depending on body weight. You're going to rest 2 to 3 minutes in between each. And then after your second round, go test your vertical jump again, and then see the difference and see how much you can just produce, all right? How much more you can produce. That's because your central nervous system is awake. You're able to really fire up the motor units, as I was saying before, and you're just getting a lot more accustomed to producing force, right? I think this is just a great way to reduce a lot of inhibition because you know the rack's not going anywhere. But I will say make sure the rack is bolted down, because if it is not, you will more than likely tip the rack over and it will fling back, and it won't be fun for anyone, but it would be funny to watch on gym fails. Extreme isometrics. So I'm not going to go crazy in depth with this one because I do have a course on my school that you can get access to with the link down below, completely free of charge. I have 5 video modules on just extreme isometrics with a program included. So if you're interested in that, make sure to click the link down below in the description. But what it is you're slowly pulling into end range with zero visible movement. So we were saying, what's the difference between this and yielding? Well, this one, it is a micro movement of extremely slow lowering. It is extremely high neurological demand because you are thinking about pulling yourself into position the entire time. This will always be done body weight. I will not recommend adding weight to this unless you are extremely advanced. But what this does is, again, enhance positional strength and movement efficiency, because your body gets really good and accustomed to producing the activity you want if it's comfortable in the end ranges. So if you are strong in ability to hold positions in the end ranges of movement, then your body understands that's safe in that end point. It will access that and everything in between. So it also improves that mind-muscle connection bodybuilders love to talk about, because you are intentfully pulling into position the entire time. And then who they're best for, if you have an athlete with movement restrictions, so that push-up iso that you just saw was fantastic for anyone with tight upper bodies, tight pecs, tight shoulders. But then you also have the split squat lunge that is also really great for lengthening the back hamstring, lengthening the back hip flexor, engaging the front hamstring. They're great for speed and elasticity prep if you don't go for it too long in duration, just because they are pretty fatiguing, or they just do get that muscle pump feeling. And then I would recommend doing these with more advanced athletes, just because the lower the training age, it's a lot harder for an athlete to stay in that position when that mental strain is happening, because you can get up to 5 minutes in length with these activities. They are mentally and physically challenging. And the main thing I want you to take away with this extreme isometric is, when your intent drops, you stop the set. It's as simple as that. So if you feel that you're losing intentionality behind the exercise that you're doing, that's when you stop. All right. Extreme isometrics are very physiologically, intellectually, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually challenging. All right. That's the PIPES acronym for you there, which I touch on in the course that you can get access to. Again, link down in the description. I'm not going to go too crazy in it because I did talk about these for almost an hour and a half, but know that they're important. Know that they're a tool in your toolbox to use, and you could make a full training program just around this type of isometric. If you're familiar with Jay Schroeder's work and Adam Archuleta, this was a key staple in those programmings and those exercises. And then something that doesn't get a lot of love and is still kind of not mainstream are oscillatory isometrics. So what it is, it's an isometric, but you're holding with a combined small rapid oscillation. So it's just whatever type of position you're in, and you're slowly going back and forth, contract, relax for a duration of time. All right, increases neural firing, stiffness, and reactivity. It's enhancing proprioception, just because you're getting used to now. You've just done 3 types of isometrics that I just said. All of them are just one main position. Sport isn't played in a static hold position. Oscillatory isometrics kind of help bridge the gap between the two, because now you are getting some type of reactive reflexive ability, which is pretty much all sport is. It is reflexive in nature no matter what sport you play. You're always usually reacting off a stimulus. So this is a great way that you can mimic that or train that inside the weight room. Cal Dietz at Minnesota with triphasic training, I'm sure you're well aware if you're watching this, it does a great job with oscillatory isometrics. And I've just had a couple videos that this is an adductor one. So just getting the hip inside the hip a little bit fired up. All right. And what they do is they also change up foot positions. So they target the adductor in slightly different ways. Great for his hockey athletes, because since adductors are a very big muscle group used in that type of sport, you see a lot of side-to-side movement while still moving forward. The adductors are a great muscle to train and have strong. All right. If you have chronic hip issues or tight hips, your adductors are most likely weak. All right. And then oscillatory isometrics, again, best for athletes that really need speed and any type of elastic sporting. So track athletes would be great for this. They're great for CNS activation days because they don't elicit a lot of muscle soreness. same as the overcoming isometrics. Short bouts of 5 to 15 seconds. Use them early in the sessions as your freshest. Think of it as like a speed accessory. So you could use this to help prep for some sprint work if you were. And it is really interesting just to see different variations. Cal does a great job of all different types of goofy looking stuff. It looks like the guy has ankle weights on with the band attached to his knees behind him. He's in some type of GHD back extension hold, holding onto the rack, and he's just firing up his hamstrings as fast as possible. So there are some funky ones out there. You could do it with bench, you could do it with squat. All it is, it's teaching you to contract, relax at a very high, rapid rate. And how can you do that for that duration of time while still making sure the intent is highest? And then this one, I just need to throw in there because there are a lot of people that still just love to do traditional powerlifting or just traditional lifting. So pause and positional isometrics is very simple and very basic. It's literally just pause reps. All right, so what it is you're holding position within a traditional lift. So pause squat, pause bench, pause RDL. This is technically an isometric by nature because you are holding the lift. And it's strength in your weakest position. So when you're doing a squat, you're most likely going to be weakest at the bottom. So you hold the bottom position up to 5 seconds, in my opinion, in my experience. I wouldn't go much longer than that. And anything with a bench, RDL, you're doing pause reps at the end of the position. All right, so where you're going to be weakest. It improves technique drastically. I love any type of pause reps or pause squats. Pause front squats are probably the hardest ones I've ever done, just because your trunk and your core get lit up like crazy, but it does help enhance your main lifts overall. I am not against main lifts. All right, so the traditional squat, bench, deadlift, my background was in powerlifting, and then I kind of went down a full neurological rabbit hole, which led me to isometrics, which I think are fantastic. And I don't think one is better than the other. I think both together make the greatest training program that you can get. You need both. You need to do both. And pause squats, pause bench, pause deadlift, it is a tremendous way to, again, with novice athletes, teach the bottom range position, because athletes just want to keep loading weight up. If you make sure the tempo is what it is, they can't just jack up the weight all the time, no matter what they do. If they have to hold 5 seconds at the bottom, you know for a fact that they're not going to be maxing out or hitting a PR that day. But what it does do is down the road still enhance that proprioceptive awareness at the bottom of the squat and increases the skill level of the movement in itself, and it does build up that strength in that movement. And then some just key takeaways. This is the last slide. I try to keep these under 20 minutes because I know you can go for a long time. Just know that not all ISOs are the same. So the intent will drive adaptation. Context determines the value of the isometric, and the right type at the right time matters. So I've mentioned a ton of different ISOs that you can use and implement right away. You can use some for in-season, off-season, peaking. All these are able to be used year-round. You just need to have the contextual awareness and understanding when to apply them, how to do it, and what type of athlete would benefit the most from what type of specific isometric. I think they all are fantastic. It's just there's a great way and a not so great way to implement them throughout the year. If you're curious and more of how to actually implement them and apply them, then that is also something for my school community down below that you can also access. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. I would appreciate it. And if you have any questions, I'm usually in my comment section quite a bit, so feel free to ask them there. If not, I'll see you guys next time. Hitman out.